Well, thanks everyone for being here. My name is Marissa Henn. I'm a community health director at Intermountain Healthcare and have been fortunate to be part of the advisory group coordinating this year's Faith Summit. And so to start us off, we actually would like to invite Father Nikas to offer an opening prayer. I know he was trying to get his video set up, but either way, we look forward to hearing his voice. So thank you so much, Father.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Let us pray to the Lord. Lord Jesus Christ, our God, the source of life and immortality, we glorify your majesty for bringing us together on this auspicious occasion of the Interfaith Suicide Prevention Summit for Faith Leaders. As we gather to celebrate your divine gift of life freely offered to all, we recall that it was on account of your unfathomable love that you fashioned us in your own divine image and likeness, entrusting us as stewards, not owners, of our lives, blessing us with the capacity of freedom and calling us to a life of loving communion. We therefore offer you, benevolent Lord, our gratitude for all your blessings, known and unknown, for our earthly life and for the heavenly joys of your kingdom which is to come. O Lord our God, who knows the frailty of human nature, according to the multitude of your compassions, forgive our sins and be gracious to your servants, who through ignorance or willfulness flee from your divine sovereignty and benevolence through thoughts of suicide or taking of one's life, whose source and origin is divine and not human. We pray that in your divine mercy, you will forgive those who in this fleeting life and world fear the challenges laid upon them and heal those who have given up hope, forgetting that whatever is born of God overcomes the world. We are reminded of the beautiful description of the church as the body of Christ by St. Paul. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. We offer thanksgiving to you, Heavenly Father, who proclaimed, I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly, as we reaffirm our unwavering commitment to the dignity of every human being and the sanctity of each human life. We extend our fervent prayers for the victims of suicide and for all whose lives and faith have been shaken by the suicide of a loved one. Furthermore, we pray that you will open our hearts and minds as faith leaders so that we may be your instruments of love and altruism to all who are in need of your all-encompassing grace and loving mercy. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father Nikas, for those inspiring and centering words as we begin today. I would like to now invite Deandra Brown actually to make an announcement.
Hello, I'm Deandra Brown. Thank you for a few moments of your time today. I have so much respect for all of our faith leaders and their continued efforts, and I've continued to work with many of you, Travis Bear included, with our faith community to help them better support survivors and victims of child abuse. So our continued efforts have led to, as you can see, the save the date in front of you. We had the opportunity last year to have a conference, and this year we want to be able to further that up and offer you a virtual session to help you better receive tools of how you can support survivors in your faith community. So as you can see, it's October 21st at 12 p.m. and we will be following the same guidelines as before, where it's 12:30 to 12:30. And just a bit about the session. We want to be able to help leaders in their efforts to better support the survivors in your community so they feel believed and supported. And we have brought in Reverend Mike Sloan from a wonderful organization called Grace. And he is the director of the Safeguarding Initiative, where he does all the trainings to help organizations engage and educate them on how to safeguard against abuse in your community. So it'll be very exciting for us to hear from Mike Sloan again, and he'll offer us many tools on what we can do when we know that there are survivors within our faith communities, how we can reach out to them and make them feel included and make them feel safe and supported in our communities so that we can allow them the opportunity to have a safe place when they may have many other environments around them where they feel less safe. So we feel it's an important opportunity for our faith leaders to engage with Mike, and hopefully we want you to join us in our efforts. And like I mentioned, October 21st at noon, and registration information is to follow. So we'll make sure that you get the digital handout so that you can contact me if you want further information about that. So thank you, everybody, and what a wonderful topic. Such a cross-section, survivors of abuse and efforts of suicide prevention. So I thank you for all that you continue to do.
Thank you so much, Deandra, and thanks for apologies for the video that was playing. We're not sure quite why the system was doing that, but hopefully it will now stop. As we move forward in our program, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the topic at hand for today before we dive right into the beautiful lineup that we have of presenters. So this is our fourth and final session in what has been an incredibly enriching, meaningful, in-depth series of conversations and skill-building activities around suicide prevention. We started off back in August talking about protective action, some of the basics of suicide prevention. We then moved into inclusive action on September 3rd, thinking about the role of faith leaders in strengthening a sense of inclusion among diverse congregants. Last week, we had an extraordinary presentation from Kathy Subiano on healing action, creating compassionate and effective approach for caring people bereaved by suicide loss. And today, we'll sort of wrap everything together with consideration of what we have learned in this series and how we can move forward with our faith as a motivator and as a vehicle for our true actions to prevent suicide. So I've been so looking forward to today because of the array of beautiful presentations and speakers and even music that we have over the next 50 minutes or so. And so we are going to kick off now. We're going to be hearing from KSL News anchor Lori Pritchard, as well as a song from the One Voice Children's Choir. And then I will allow our presenters to introduce themselves to let things flow smoothly through there. And just a reminder, if our presenters could keep themselves on mute when not presenting to keep the audio quality for everyone else. And so with that, I think we can get started.
The day was August 16th, 2019. It was a Friday. I got up at 3 a.m. like I did every morning to get ready for our show that starts at 4:30. I went downstairs and my husband Travis did like he did every morning. He laid out coffee and my breakfast. But this day was different. It was my birthday. So in addition to that, he'd left me gifts and a card. Later on that morning, he got our kids ready for school, got him up, got him dressed, fed him, kissed them goodbye. That was the last time any of us ever saw him. He was 44 years old. My husband killed himself on my birthday, which if I think about it is outrageous. We were happy. We were happy. He was educated. He was a successful physical therapist. He had 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. He had wonderful parents. It made no sense. But I've come to realize now that my husband didn't kill himself because it was my birthday. He killed himself because he simply couldn't live another day. And I know that now because he left a paper trail. My husband and I have been married for 15 years, 2 months shy, in fact. And as embarrassing as it is to say it, I never knew he suffered from depression. My guess is he was clinically depressed, but he was active, he was engaged, He got more done in a day than I ever did. But I look at him now. Pictures of him on our son's birthday or at Christmas or sitting in a restaurant in Tokyo. He looks miserable. And our children singing him happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Henry.
I don't know how I could have been so blind. It's as plain as day, and it haunts me. I told you Travis left a paper trail, and a couple weeks after he died, I found these. They're notebooks he'd been writing in since 2016. They're a window into his mind and a side of my husband that I never knew. One entry that's particularly stunning reads, "I have to choose to let my pain consume me or find strength in the pain and find a purpose in my life." My husband was a master at hiding his depression. He never talked about being in pain. He never talked about seeing himself as a complete and utter failure, but it's there. It's in his journals. He called it the bully in his brain, and that bully was relentless. It refused to surrender its power over him. And I think about the man I knew and the qualities that made him such a great husband and father, and I realized so much of who he was fueled by his depression. Nothing was ever about Travis, ever. All he ever wanted to do was to make us happy. But the problem is, I don't think he knew how to make himself happy. I used to tell him all the time how much I loved him and how thankful I was to be married to him. And in those last few years, he would say to me, "Are you sure? There's 7 billion people in the world." And I thought that was such a funny thing to say. I didn't understand why he said that, but I get it now. He didn't feel like he deserved to be loved. This is where I could rattle through a list of statistics that show the link between depression and suicide, but I'm not going to do that because Travis is the statistic. This is his story of how he tried to pull himself out of that hole of depression. After he died, I checked the browser history on our computer. I was astounded at the breadth of research that he had done on suicide and depression. There were hundreds of journal articles. And I found out later that the day before he died, he spent 12 minutes on the phone with the National Suicide Hotline. But when he came home from work that night, he didn't say a word to me. There were times in our marriage I knew Travis was struggling, but it was always centered around his job. He thought he should be further along in his career, and to me that is an easy problem to solve. You just change your circumstance, right? And so I'd encourage him to do other things. Anything deeper than that, he would say he didn't want to talk about it. It made him feel weak. And I let him get away with that. But there was one conversation that we had about a month before he died that was a little raw. It was the first time he gave me any indication that his depression wasn't situational. It was more systemic. It was coming from within, who he was and how he felt about himself. And to be honest, it scared me. And the next morning, he left me this note. "Lori, I love you. You're a goofball husband." And that's what Travis did. He downplayed it. He didn't seem to worry, so I didn't worry. It wasn't until after he died I realized just how serious his depression was, but it took him dying to get me there. Please don't be like me. Don't let the person you love talk you out of your concern for them. I don't blame myself for my husband's death. I blame myself. I was so blind to that illusion that he created. I didn't act fast enough to get him help. My therapist is a professor at the University of Utah. She's an expert in mental health. She often says, if only people would view depression like they do cancer. Depression is a medical diagnosis that deserves medical treatment. Depression is not a character flaw. Depression is not a weakness. You are not a goofball, and trust me, you are not going to snap out of it. 3 years of journal entries prove he could not dig himself out of that hole. So how do you silence that bully in your brain? I am not an expert, but I know this. You can do everything right to get yourself through a day of depression. But what happens on that one day you just don't want to work so hard anymore? Who's going to carry you through? For Travis, that person should have been me. But I didn't know. If you hear anything from me, please hear this. Tell someone you love you're struggling. Yes, tell a professional, but tell someone you love. I knew something was wrong that morning. I didn't know something was that wrong. Had I known more, I could have done more. I'm not here to romanticize suicide or make a martyr out of my husband. What he did and what he failed to do to get help is not okay. No family should go through the pain, the heartache, and the disbelief that we have gone through. People talk a lot about suicide. They don't often talk about the people who are left behind. And the worst moment of my life was not the police telling me that my husband was dead. The worst moment of my life was telling our children what happened to their father. Thankfully, I had help. The head of KSL got me in contact with the woman who's now my therapist, the University of Utah professor I was telling you about. She told me flat out, no matter what I said to them, I had to tell them the truth, no matter how awful it was. And that's the thing, I wanted to lie to them. I wanted to tell them that their father had fallen and hit his head or had a heart attack, anything but the truth. But Anne told me what to say, and I said it verbatim. Your father died from depression. He took his own life. My son was 10, and my daughter was 13. How did he think that this was the solution? Because above all else, Travis loved his children. Had he understood the pain that he was inflicting upon them, he never would have done it. Now, I will spend the rest of my life trying to keep my children alive, because now they're more likely to die the same way. So not only am I mourning a past I cannot change, I am terrified of my future and what suicide brings with it. Despite that, people say to me, suicide is selfish. And I will say to you, Travis honestly thought he was being selfless. That bully in his brain made him believe that we would be better off without him. It would be comical if it weren't so tragic. But I would say to you, suicide is not selfish. It is just really stupid. Suicide will not get you the relief that you're looking for. It only causes a whole other cascade of problems that the people you love most in the world have to pick up and carry for you. Don't leave that legacy to your family or to your children. I'm telling you this, but in reality, I'm talking to him. I'm giving you the plea that I wasn't able to give him, to convince you, whomever you are, please, don't take your life. Think about the people you love. They will not be better off without you. I know. A year's gone by, and a birthday has passed. These are the gifts he left me that morning. I can't open them. They're a painful reminder of what was meant to be. A life lived together.
Yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Great. We'd welcome any thoughts you'd like to share.
Um, um, I think maybe a postscript to some of the things that I said in my TED Talk. Number one, it took a real emotional toll for me to put that together. It really kind of sent me into a very dark place for a little while. And it took a while to get out of that. And I only say that because the emotional toll that it took on me, I can't imagine what Travis lived with for years of his life. I read a profile piece in the New York Times on the restaurateur David Chang, and he suffers from depression and thoughts of suicide. And he explained it this way. He said it's like pushing a boulder up a hill every single day. It takes that much effort. And so I can't imagine what the effort that it took for him to live through his depression, because I said in my talk that he was functional, he was active, and now that I think about it, there was very little stillness to him. He was always doing something. He wanted to learn Spanish. He wanted to learn sign language. He was always working on another physical therapy certification. He was working on his doctorate. I mean, he was always doing something. And I think maybe some of that had to do with his depression, that he couldn't be quiet or still. He was driving himself always. And I'm not sure that's necessarily the classic sign of depression. And that's probably what threw me off, was that he didn't lie around in bed. He was always up before me in the mornings on the weekends, and he was the last to go to bed. And so it just the classic signs of depression weren't necessarily there. And the final thing I want to point out, and I think that this is really, really important, because I mentioned the fact that he called the National Suicide Hotline the day before he died. And I have no idea what he told them or why he called. And I don't want others out there to think, well, it didn't help him, so it's not going to help me. I think he was in denial for a very long time about the real risk he was facing with his depression. And so why he reached out to them, I don't know. But I don't want to keep that from others reaching out if they need help, because that really is a lifeline for so many people.
Thank you so much, Lori, for your TED Talk and the intense just courage and pain that it must have required to put those words together for the public, and then for joining us today. I think we are all learning so much, and our hearts are with you. And I think this faith leaders community will so benefit from what you have shared today on a lot of different levels. So just thank you.
You're welcome.
saw brilliance when the world was asleep. There are things that we can have but can't keep. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, we're quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. The reminders pull the floor from your feet. In the kitchen, one more chair than you need. Oh, and you're angry, and you should be. It's not fair. Just 'cause you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, we're quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, we're quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Well, I do.
When I watched Lori's TED Talk, I was just so touched by that, and I thought of a book that I'm sure many of you read. If you haven't, you need to. I think this should be required reading for the human race. It's Viktor Frankl, who spent years in a concentration camp in Germany, and towards the end of his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he writes, "Even the helpless victim of a hopeless situation may rise above himself. He may grow beyond himself, and in Lori's case, herself, and by so doing, change himself. He may turn personal tragedy into triumph." That last sentence is just so beautiful, coming from this man who suffered so much at the hands of others. He may turn personal tragedy into triumph. And when I watched Lori's presentation, I thought that same thing. That here we have a person turning personal tragedy into triumph, and we can tell just from her thoughts afterward how difficult this really is. So I'm just so grateful to be on the program with Lori. I want to switch gears here a little bit and tell you just a little bit about where I'm coming from. So I am a religion professor at Brigham Young University, but I'm also a dad. A couple of years ago, this happened to my wife and I. We have two twin boys. This is baby number 4 and baby number 5. Here's another one of them right here. That one on the right makes us laugh. That's baby number 4. His face doesn't change. If you watch this go back and forth, he's got the exact same face. 8 months later, we brought him home, and he had the exact same face. My wife said, "I know who he looks like," and I said, "Who?" And she said, "He looks to me like Megamind." And I said, "That's exactly right. He does. He looks just like Megamind." He's just a fun change of our world to have twins. I wanted to just show you my family because this is really where I'm coming from. When I was asked to speak at the Faith Summit, I thought of my own family because, as much as we read statistics of depression and suicide, we may look at those numbers and forget that these are individuals, that these are people. They're sons and daughters. They are husbands and wives. And Lori did such a great job of reminding us of that. And I don't think we can ever lose sight of the individual. In fact, I would say, in my experience, mental illness and help for those with mental illness is best treated individually. The closer we can get to a one-by-one ministry is the closer we can get to really helping people. Summits and big presentations, they're helpful, of course, but as these faith leaders work one by one with individual young people, adults, whoever, that is really where the greatest progress is to be made. I think if you read the Bible and you look at the ministry of Jesus Christ, you see him talking to individuals, and to me that's where the progress is made. We can't do it all the time, but I would say anytime you can work with an individual, that's where you're going to see the greatest benefit, is a conversation with an individual. I wrote a book on happiness. It sold dozens of copies, mostly to my mother. But the one thing I wanted to show, I just wanted to show you a couple of things that I learned during the book. One was a fascinating study between paraplegics and lottery winners. They wanted to know who was happier. This should not be a tough question, right? Who is happier? Someone who's won hundreds of millions of dollars, or someone who loses the use of their legs? This should not be a difficult question. Yet after 18 months, these researchers found that their happiness levels were the exact same. They were the exact same. You would think that, right? Like, no, that cannot be. If I won that much money, I'd never be unhappy again. Or if I lost the use of my legs, I'd never be happy again. Yet both of those statements are absolutely untrue. So if happiness doesn't happen to us, if it's not something that happens to us, it must be something that happens inside of us. And that ends up being the case. So it turns out that happiness occurs right over your left eye. I wanted to, as part of the book I was writing, I wanted to find out what neuroscientists were saying about happiness. I love integrating both science and faith and reason. And so I wanted to see how this worked. It turns out right above the left eye is where quite a bit of the happiness, if you are monitoring someone's brain who's really happy, it's kind of lighting up all over there. One thing that is now kind of basically proven is exactly what Lori said earlier, and is that depression is not a character problem. It is not two people having the exact same mind. They're just looking at things differently. This is definitely a chemistry or a medical problem. And so I hope that we're past the days. I think we are, and I hope as faith leaders, everyone listening, I hope that you're past the days of you just need to work harder. You just need to try more. You just need to pray more. You just need to fill in the blank, right? Where that's just not the case. That we need to get people who are suffering, like Lori's husband, to professionals, medical professionals, professional therapists who see this type of thing daily, who work with these people and can give them real solutions. Back when I was in high school, back in the 1900s, I don't know if any of you remember the 1900s, but way back in the 1900s, not a lot of us had problems like this, or at least it wasn't talked about very much. When I was sad, I said, "Hey, Dad, I'm sad," and he told me to get outside, do some work, and stop watching so much Saved by the Bell. And that pretty much worked for me then. And it's nice that it worked then, but it's not going to work now. Look at the changes that are happening. Take a look. Student depression is on the rise between 12 and 25 years old. Watch these rates, and they're going to continue to climb because we don't know why it's happening. Now, there might be some people who claim they know why it's happening. There's all sorts of studies to tell you why are these young people, why are the rates of depression climbing? Everything from cell phones to social media to elevation, pollution, bad diets. All of these things are being studied right now. And it all comes to one conclusion: nobody knows why. If someone comes to you and says, "I know why the rates of depression are so high among young people," I would shy away from that person, because the experts don't know why. It must be some sort of perfect storm that is happening between a lot of factors. So instead of trying to figure out why, we're going to let other people try to figure out why. There's researchers working on that constantly. As faith leaders, as youth leaders, group leaders, what we can do is focus on what we can do about it right now until we know why. And I love what the United Way in Utah County has done in the last year, and I wanted to show you this. They took Maslow's hierarchy of needs and said, let's see if we can apply this to someone, a youth, a young adult who is suffering with depression. And they've had a lot of success here. What they're saying is, first, address the physiological needs of the person. How is their sleep? What is their diet like? Let's address those things. And then when we get those in place, let's then address their need for safety, not just safety, physical safety, but also emotional safety and sexual safety. And then after that, after we've set those needs, and they're seeing a lot of success with this. They call it emotional generosity. I wanted you to see. They call it emotional generosity, where you take a young person who is behaving, who is acting out, who their depression is causing them to behave in ways they definitely shouldn't behave. And instead of punishing them, our old system of punishment and reward, right? Instead of punishing them, which really gets rid of safety and gets rid of connection, they're saying, let's give these young people emotional generosity, and basically just let's be merciful as we try to work them up this hierarchy. And I've been so impressed with the results they're seeing. Of course, it isn't a perfect system, but I would encourage you to use Google and look up a couple of things. Just look up United Way in Utah County and Maslow's hierarchy, something like that, and you'll see some of the presentations they've given, and that this is really working. It worked for me just the other day. My daughter, who struggles with some anxiety, came into our bedroom, my wife and I, and really was having an anxiety attack and really panicking. Now, whereas before I might go right to safety, right? She's not feeling safe, or connection. I first said, okay, talk to me here really quick, Maddie. Tell me about what you've eaten today. And she said, I haven't eaten anything, right? I had a Diet Mountain Dew for lunch. And I'm like, okay. And how'd you sleep last night? And so we went and got a nice bite to eat. And then we got her to sleep. And the next day we discussed, because of this idea of emotional generosity, instead of attacking her confidence or her connection with us, I said, okay, let's first work on physical needs. Again, it's not a foolproof approach, but it is a new way of looking at it, which I think can be very helpful. A new set of eyes can be very helpful. All right. I want to address something that's more depression prevention than suicide prevention. I hope that's okay. If you look at where, why people are happy, if there's people who study happiness their entire life, right? 40 years of study, and they just study happiness. And this chart right here is pretty well set, hasn't been really challenged in the last few decades, just because every study after every study shows about the same thing, that 50% of your happiness just comes from your DNA. It's just from your parents. So if you wake up happy and go to bed happy, you should thank your parents. If you don't wake up happy and go to bed happy, you should see a therapist about your parents, because 50% of that comes from your DNA. Look how small your circumstances matter to your happiness. This is incredible to me. I could know everything about you. I could know how much you make. I could know how tall you are. I could know your weight. I could know where you work. I could know all of these things about you, and yet I wouldn't know that much about your happiness. It's so difficult to predict. The 40% I want to talk about here is these intentional activities. This is something we can actually do something about. We can help young people develop these habits in their life that will actually increase their happiness. Now, before I get into these intentional activities, please know I am not saying these are the cure for mental illness. These are not the cure for mental illness. These will help anyone on wherever they are in the spectrum become a little bit happier. But this is not the cure. Like I couldn't say to Lori's husband, you just need to do a few of these intentional activities. No, he needs professionals to help him. I hope that makes sense. These intentional activities, though, can be helpful if someone is reaching out for that help, or if, say, they're not clinically depressed, they're just unhappy. It would help them increase the happiness in their life. I hope that makes sense. I don't want to come at this like, here's the cure. It is not the cure, but it is helpful things. So here's what I want to do. I like to make an analogy that these intentional activities are like brushstrokes on a painting. If you look at Starry Night, Starry Night is apparently the most valuable painting in the United States. It's worth $165 million, and it's in New York City. And if you take a really close look at Starry Night, what you find is that it is made up of hundreds of thousands of tiny brushstrokes. From a distance, you may not feel that way. You're like, oh, there's, I could count that many. But as you just look closer and closer at the painting, you find there are so many small little brushstrokes. Now, here's what I want you to notice, is that there is no brushstroke here that is incredibly impressive, right? You wouldn't say that's the brushstroke that made it worth $165 million. No, it's all of them. But if you look at one all by itself, it's not all that mesmerizing. That's what these intentional activities are. I like to call them brushstrokes because they're not so impressive on their own. But as you do them over and over and over and add a lot more of these, like the different colors, they start to produce quite an effect in people's lives. All right, so I'm going to give you 12 of these. Let's talk about each one just briefly, okay? I would, if I was working with a young person who was really struggling, they're just unhappy, they're acting out, and maybe they don't have the type of depression that they need to go see a doctor or therapist for, or maybe they are seeing a doctor and a therapist, and I want to help them a little bit more. This is where I can help them. Number one, happiness and social circle are almost always twins. So I know about twins. You saw those earlier. Happiness and social circle. Happy people, number one, happy people surround themselves with happy people. I cannot tell you how important it is for young people to be surrounded by happy people. For everyone, really. Tell me the 5 people you spend the most time with, and I can almost predict how happy you're going to be because it affects us so much. So this is something that we need to help young people see, that who you spend time with affects how you feel. 2, happy people try to be happy. This is an interesting thing. Again, it's not a cure for depression, just trying to be happy. But when researchers study the happiest people, they ask them, why are you so happy? And they said, well, and I don't feel so happy. I make an effort to become happier. I think about happy things. Right? Think of something that makes you happy right now. Think of your children or your grandchildren or people falling on the ice, whatever you want. I don't know, whatever makes you happy, right? If you were to focus on that for a while, your brain would actually follow up with the chemistry that makes you happy. Brain is very flexible that way. All right, number 3, happy people use their signature strengths often. Signature strengths are, they're like signatures. That's why I call them signature strengths. They're unique to the individual. What they are things that you do that essentially fill you up with energy. So think of something that might drain other people of energy. Like for my wife, she loves to play the piano and it fills her up with energy. When most people like me don't really get that from the piano, but she can play for 90 minutes and she'll feel better for having done that. She'll feel more energetic. Some people it's art. Some people it's cooking, right? For some people it's spending time with children. For others, it's exercise, sports. What are your signature strengths? If you had to identify some, I want you to identify some right now. What are your signature strengths? Things that you do that you actually feel more energized after doing them, where other people would say, some other people would say, oh, that's such a chore. That, if you can identify those and then build them into your routine, your daily and weekly routine, it's going to have an effect. It's a brushstroke. Happy people, number 4, spend money on other people. This is where I tell my friends that they're unhappy, so they need to spend money on me. No, if we learn to give, giving seems to have a profound effect on the happiness centers of the brain. And it doesn't have to be a large amount. It can just be a little bit. It's the act of giving. If we can teach our children the act of sharing, the act of giving, it has an effect on the brain. Number 5, happy people have deep in-person conversations. You can see that our world is becoming more and more digital. I think to be part of this summit, it was all email, right? And that's almost totally fine. But when it comes to my relationships, I can't email through my marriage, right? Or text through my marriage or through my parenting. And so these in-person conversations are so very important. Have you ever gone to dinner with a friend, or maybe you went out to dinner with a group of friends and you were sitting there talking and time just flew by? And pretty soon the server said, hey, we're going to close down the restaurant. You guys are going to have to leave soon, right? And you said, oh, okay. And then they came back 20 minutes later and said, no, we're serious. And you had lost track of time. That is because your brain is lighting up. The happiness centers of your brain are lighting up with those in-person conversations. Number 6, happy people laugh. I know this one seems quite obvious, but it's important. Did you know that children, on average, 8 and younger, 9 and younger, laugh 300 times a day? 300 times a day. Adults, 18 and up, or 21 and up, it's 15. What happened to us, you guys? Why did we stop laughing? Was it the mortgage? Laughing has an incredible effect on the brain. It's interesting to me what adults choose to watch, right? When they sit down at night, maybe the kids are all in bed and they're going to watch a show. It's so often someone's watching someone be killed, and then the detective figures it out, just like he did last night and just like he did the night before that. And we are choosing these kind of dark shows, which are maybe interesting, but every once in a while we might want to choose the comedy. We might want to say, okay, how can I work laughter more into the life of our family? All right, number 7, happy people use music. How many of you already do this? Already use music to make yourself happier? You need to have a happy playlist. Your family needs to have a happy playlist. Music has a profound effect on the brain. I wish I could go into all the research of it, but I'll just tell you that it is profound, that children respond to music. They respond to classical music. Students who listen to classical music get better grades. I mean, the brain has an incredible response to uplifting music. All right, number 8. Happy people are usually looking forward to something. So when social scientists study these happy people, they're saying, okay, what makes you so happy? And one thing they usually have all in common is that they've got something out there they're looking forward to. A trip or a lunch or a date. They're looking forward to something. So as parents and leaders, we can put these fun things on the calendar and have them out there and be talking about them. Have you ever noticed that the anticipation for a vacation is sometimes better than the vacation itself? That's because the centers of the brain that have to do with pleasure of anticipation are in different centers of experiencing the pleasure. So having these things on the calendar can really have a good effect on the brain. All right, number 9, and I hate this one too. Happy people exercise and have a healthy diet. I wish this wasn't true. I wish I could tell you happy people have ding dongs and a Mountain Dew for lunch every day, but that's just not the way it goes. Happy people exercise and have a healthy diet. Now, you might look at that and say, well, of course they're happy, they're skinny. Nope, it has nothing to do with that. Researchers have taken people, had them exercise, they lose no weight, they don't come out in any dress sizes or anything like that, and yet they report being happier. Exercise has been shown to do more for depression than antidepressants. Now, I'm not saying that you should go off your antidepressants and just exercise, but I'm just saying that's the powerful effect of exercise. And second is diet. I think we've lost this sometimes as a people, the realization that our brain, our entire body, in fact, but our brain can only function on the food we give it. If you eat junk, you're going to feel like junk. Now, every once in a while, having a soda or candy is not a big deal. But if you're drinking Diet Coke like water, that is going to have an effect on your brain. And your brain takes 20% of the food that you eat. So it's only about 1% of your body weight, your brain, maybe 2% of your body weight, but it takes 20 to 25% of the food that you eat. So we've got to teach our young people how to eat well, especially when they go off on their own. I can't tell you how many students at the university get to the university and their diet goes just spirals out of control because they have no way, they don't know how to control that or why they should. Number 10, happy people take time to unplug and go outside. I wish I could show you all the research on this. There is something so restorative about nature. Just 20 minutes of consecutive time outside has an effect on the brain. The brain really starts responding to being outside. Yet a lot of people go from the house to the garage. They drive their car to their office or to the grocery store. They go inside, they come back to the house, park back in the garage, and they're just never outside. They think they're outside because they look outside through windows, but they're never actually outside. In fact, did you know the number one activity of happy families? Some of you are going to hate me for this. It's camping. The number one activity of happy families is camping. Why? Well, you're getting outside, and look what else is probably happening, right? You're probably having more in-person conversations. You're unplugging from screens. Screen time and depression are linked. Now, that's not say that they're causing one another. No one knows if screen time and depression are causationally linked, but they are correlated, which means they often go together. So I would limit the amount of screen time for young people. And I would say, like in my house, phones don't go to the bedroom with you. And at a certain time at night, all screens go off, even for mom and dad, right? Because we want to allow that time to unplug. And then go eat outside, go read outside, go for a walk. Did you know that Seventh-day Adventists have the longest average lifespan of all religions, Seventh-day Adventists? And now I looked into this, and they're the only religion that I know of that requires a Sabbath day nature hike, time outside. And I wonder if that has something to do with it. All right, number 11, happy people get enough sleep. Happy people get enough sleep. This one we've already talked about a little bit with the Maslow's hierarchy, but I just can't tell you how crucial this one is. Shakespeare said that sleep is the golden chain that links our health and our bodies together. And then, 300 years later, Margaret Thatcher said sleep is for wimps. So we have got this idea that the less sleep you get is somehow, you're more important. Nothing could be further from the truth. Young people need enough sleep, especially those who are under 18, whose brains are still developing. They absolutely must get enough sleep. And you've seen this in your own children, I am sure. You can see when they haven't had enough sleep, they get irritable, and that's just after 1 or 2 days of lack of sleep. But think about a constant lack of sleep over, months, weeks, and months at a time. That will have a serious effect on the brain. And the last one, which I just love because I didn't see it coming when I wrote the book, is happy people meditate. Happy people meditate. And this one was fascinating to me because when I thought of meditation, I thought you had to balance on one finger and have, 1,000 candles around you. And then I realized that that's not what it is, that meditation is just being still. How often in sacred writing do we hear from God, be still, pray always. This idea of please take time to meditate, ponder, just sit and just allow yourself to think. And yet look at our world today. In the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we have the prophet Joseph Smith talking about him pondering. And I've asked my students, why would he ponder so much? And I said, tell me about his life. He's a farmer. He walks to town. Almost his entire day is pondering, a lot of time to think. And I asked them, when do you get time to think? There's always something in their face, always. There's always a screen. There's always a billboard. There's always something in their face. I said, when do you get time to ponder? And they said, well, when I fall asleep, I get a few minutes to ponder. They said, sometimes when I drive or in the shower. And yet the phone is taking over those, right? We have one young person told me he puts his phone inside a plastic bag and takes it in the shower so he won't miss out on anything. We have, I bet you've gone to the point where you dropped your phone on your face because you took it to bed with you and your brain just gave up, right? We're losing our meditation time, and it's really having a profound effect. Here's what I'd like you to do, and you can use the chat for this if you'd like. I would like you to choose one or two. I know some of you are thinking, I'm going to do all 12. No, don't do all 12 because that means you won't do any. But I'd like you to choose one or two that you think, you know what, my family and I could probably do this a little bit better. Could you, and you can put it right in the chat, I think you can just, on the bottom left-hand side there, you can just click all. I don't know if it's working. Someone type in there to see, maybe it's not working for us. But choose one. Choose one that you might say, you know what, we need to do that. Okay, Andrea, thank you. Thank you for your help. All right. Oh, I love it. Amy, Teresa, Benet, yes. Sharon, yes. This is absolutely crucial. And you might even want to take this list. I didn't make this up. This wasn't just out of my head. I spent, a good 18 months looking through the research. You can maybe put this up in the house and say, hey, everybody choose something. Because I've noticed that when I implement the very things that I've studied here, I teach this stuff, I better try it. I find myself coming back, my happiness levels start to rise up again. It's kind of like an energy level. It starts to rise up again. All right. Again, we can get these slides to you anytime. I think they're actually in the downloadable content. Benet, you could probably explain how to get there a little bit later because I know I put it in the downloadable content, but I just don't know where to access that. Okay. I wanted to show you the one thing about meditation. I forgot to show you this. This was a study done by Richard Davidson. It says, in one of the most powerful studies on the influence of self-compassion on the brain, neuroscientist Dr. Richard Davidson studied the brains of Tibetan monks who had more than 10,000 hours of various meditation. When he watched the brains, he found that when they were engaged in compassion meditation, they were sending compassion to themselves and all beings. They showed the highest readings ever recorded in the happiness centers of the brain. Is that not just wonderful? Right? It's just exhilarating to think about that. If I win, maybe we can look back at this list and you can say, how could I combine all of these, right? I'm going to go up in the mountains. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to have good music on. I'll take a hammock so I can fall asleep, right? It makes you want to do these things so you can, start adding these brush strokes to your life. Kevin, I'm with you. I desperately need mountains or lake or something. I am with you. I spent last weekend with my son in Fish Lake. And again, it just felt rejuvenating, felt restoring. Okay, I need to finish up here. Sorry if I've gone over my time. I've been having too much fun. But I want to share with you one last story, two last stories really, and they'll be short. This is from one of our church leaders, President Ballard. He said, "Please remember the experience of a friend of mine. He had never owned a horse in his life until he married a wonderful woman who loves horses. Wanting to impress his new bride, he announced one evening he was going to go to pasture to teach a colt how to be led. He weighed more than the colt. He knew more than the colt. He assumed all he would need to do was pull on the lead rope, right? And sooner or later, the colt's going to follow him. He was sure this would be short and simple, right? Short and simple. Any of you worked with horses? Is the process of teaching a colt how to be led going to be short and simple? He attached the lead rope to the halter. He got in front of the colt and pulled. So the horse resisted. Oh, okay, it went back. My friend pulled harder, and the colt planted his legs more firmly. So he really pulled, and the colt fell over. The process was repeated several times until my friend made this assessment. In just 4 or 5 minutes, he had successfully taught the colt to fall over. All he would need to do was get in front of the colt. He would pick up the rope, and the colt would lay down. Over it would go. His wife, watching this process, finally suggested that instead of getting in front of the colt and pulling, he might try wrapping the rope around the colt and walking alongside. To my friend's chagrin, it worked. There seems to be something inside each of us that resists being told or pushed or pulled. Do you feel that way too? I do. I resist when anyone tells me what to do or pushes me to do something or pulls me. But if someone loves me, puts an alarm alongside me and walks alongside me, I'm very likely to follow. Very likely to follow. So I want to tell you about a dream I had that's very similar to this. This will be my last section here. And this is quite personal to me, and I hope it will mean something to you. Many years ago, probably about 10 years ago, I had a dream. And I'm not a dreamer. I'm not someone who I think that's how, the God speaks to me, is through dreams. I'm sure he does to other people, but it's just not to me. And but one night I had a dream. I was back home in St. George. This is where I grew up. And these beautiful red cliffs were a lot of fun when I was a kid. We would go ride our bike up and down the mountainside. I just think of it now and think, oh, goodness, we could have died at any time. We would roll rocks down, and the sandstone rocks would explode, or we'd play who could get closest to the cars without hitting them. Well, in this dream, I was up on the cliffs of St. George, but I wasn't a kid. I was a dad, and my daughter was there, and she's about 5 years old at the time. We were walking along together, and I thought she was getting too close to those dangerous cliffs. And so I said, hey, Maddie, why don't you get away from the cliffs? And she thought it would be funny because she's 5 to go towards the cliffs, right? Do the opposite of what Dad said. Now, she's not being rebellious. It's just that she thinks it's funny and her brain's not fully developed, right? So she goes a little bit towards the cliff. So I have to use my sterner voice. I had to use my dad voice. I bet everybody here, even the moms here, have a dad voice. I had to use my dad voice. And I said, Maddie, stop where you are. And she turned and looked at me, and I took a step towards her, and she took a step back towards the cliff. And I said, no, do not move. And I took a step towards her, and she took another step back towards the cliff. And this process kept going until she's very close to the edge. And now I'm panicking. I'm getting angry. She's still just smiling at me, thinking this is the funniest game ever. And now I know if she takes another step back, she's going to fall. She has no idea the danger around her. Have you ever seen young people like this who have no idea of the danger around them? They're just clueless to it. And yet they just are standing there smiling like, I'm fine. Well, I had an impression. Now, if I'd known it was a dream, I would have just grabbed her and flown to Disneyland. But I really thought this was real. So I said, in my dream, I had an impression that was, you could either take a step forward and try to grab her, or you could do something entirely against your nature. You could take a step away from her. You could take a step back. And I thought, no. If I take a step back, I won't be able to grab her. And now this is the point I must have known it was a dream, because I did the right thing. I decided to take a step back. I took a step back. And she thought that was really weird. So she took a step forward. She took a step towards me. And I thought, that was my initial reaction is, okay, now she's away from the cliff. Grab her. No. Resist that temptation. Take another step back. So I took another step back, and she was a little confused, wondering why this wasn't fun anymore. And so she took a step forward. I took another step back. She took another step forward, and I thought, what am I doing? Why are we even close to this cliff? I turned around and I ran away from her, and she followed me, and I woke up. I remember telling my wife, Sarah, about the dream. I told her all about it, and she was pretty floored by it. She said, that's an incredible dream. You feel like you know what it means, don't you? And I went, yeah. I'll be totally honest with you all. At that point, I really thought it meant don't eat pizza after midnight. Like, that's really what I thought it meant. But I said, well, why don't you tell me what you think it means, and then I'll tell you what I think it means, and you know, we can compare. So she just said something that changed my life. Don't you love it when your spouse just changes your life? She said, I think there's something telling you that you have a tendency to force a lot as a parent. My house, my rules, right? Not under my roof. And that's the way I was raised. And she said, I think something's telling you that if you use that on this girl, you're going to end up pushing her to the very places you don't want her to go. And you're going to be part of the major cause of that. And I thought, yeah, that's true. It's totally true. And then she patted me on the chest, I remember, and she said, I think in parenting, we both have to learn. It's not about force. It's not about forcing. It's about leading. In parenting, it's not about forcing. It's about leading. And it really is that way for all of us as leaders. We need to be better leaders and get away from the idea of forcing. So my hope and my prayer for you is that as this entire summit, starts to come to a close, that among all the incredible things you've learned from the awesome presenters and sessions, that one of those things you take away from me is that when you have the choice, when the choice is right in front of you between force and lead, I hope and pray you'll choose to lead. Thank you so much for having me today. So grateful.
Thank you so much, Hank, for those inspiring and just also very practical words of wisdom for all of us. And
You're so
as we
kind.
move
Thanks
forward,
so much.
yeah, and as we move forward, part of what was an important driver of the creation of this virtual summit was first determining what our real purpose is in terms of the vision for this gathering and this series of gatherings. And so the advisory group that designed this series put together a consensus statement. And as I was listening to you, Hank, I thought that a couple lines from that consensus statement bear repeating because I think you touched on them and as we think about their applicability to faith leaders. And as we put that consensus statement together, we said that we believe faith is at the heart of our spiritual traditions and communities. Faith gives us reason to believe, hope, and act. And our faith comes alive when we act on it, which then inspires a ripple effect of hopeful action in others. So that idea of action, of deliberate decision-making, inspiring a ripple effect of goodness in others, just I love the ways in which your remarks helped bring that to life. So thank you. And we're actually now going to begin thinking more about action, and I would love to invite Pastor Logan Wolf and Sister Michelle Craig, who are going to take about 15 minutes to talk with us about some action steps that we can all take to prevent suicide.
Hey, thanks, Marissa. I'm just really grateful for the opportunity that I've had to listen today and over the past few weeks. I've been really touched by those who have shared today, for Lori, for being so vulnerable and sharing her experience. And to Hank, I loved the practical insights that you shared on happiness and on the hierarchy of needs. Just really fascinating. And, I think hopefully we've all had something that's kind of clicked with us, that we can keep in our minds and our hearts, and that we can move forward. Hopefully we've had thoughts and actions, or thoughts and impressions that have come to our mind. And I hope that we can be intentional about those things that we've thought and those impressions that we've had, and have the courage to act on them, that we can be better for having attended this summit. Therefore what? We've spent time, we've learned, we've heard wonderful presentations. Now, therefore what? Most of you, well, I don't know, maybe you're not like me, but sometimes I'm a little bit intimidated or unsure of how to help those around me that are struggling. I think I'm not a trained therapist, but the fact that you're here today is evidence that you want to help, and that you're able, not only you want to, but that you're able to help. And in thinking about this principle of therefore what, I've learned a few things in this summit and in various conversations that have been helpful to me. They're action items that are simple, but they can have a tremendous impact. And I think there are things that every one of us can do in our various circles of influence. Sitting by and doing nothing because we feel unprepared or unqualified is probably not the best option. I loved what Hank was talking to us about, the importance of interacting and the importance of our work with individuals, one by one. And when someone in our circle is struggling, I think just being with them can be helpful. I don't think we have to worry about saying just the right thing, as maybe a trained therapist would, but rather letting them know that they're loved and cared about. Now, things are a little bit different in our world because of COVID restrictions, and I think many are feeling isolated, but we can still connect, and I think we need to be intentional about doing that. We can sit on a porch, appropriately distanced, and have conversations. We can connect through technology, but if you're a faith leader in a congregation, maybe you can be intentional about planning activities where people can connect. Perhaps you could leave this summit and share with somebody in your family or your congregation something that you learned about suicide prevention. You could seek for additional training such as QPR, for yourself or your congregation. I remember I signed up for a QPR training after my first summit a number of years ago, and I don't remember a lot of things, but there are these nuggets that have just stayed in my mind that are really very valuable to me. You could leave this summit and ask someone that you're genuinely concerned about. You could ask them about suicide. Again, not worrying about saying just the right thing, but conveying your interest and your love and letting them know that physical, emotional, professional, spiritual help is available and that you're available as a listening ear. And as a faith leader, you can do a lot in your congregation to reduce the stigma of suicide and mental health struggles. We have to be comfortable having these conversations that are sometimes a little bit hard. And again, just focusing on our love and our concern, and that will speak louder than words. And I think as we are intentional about reaching out to others in our circles, in our families, in our neighborhoods, in our congregations, we can always express love for and confidence in other people. We can let people know that we will never stop loving them and that it would be so sad, if they were gone. Ministering to and loving others one by one is perhaps the most important thing we can do in this realm. And I think every one of us, regardless of our backgrounds, can do that. I know we can do that. Thank you for this opportunity just to share quickly some of my thoughts. I'm really excited to listen to Pastor Logan Wolf. I know he's wonderful with his congregation, and I'm anxious to hear what he has to say.
Great. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Logan. We probably have about another 3 minutes and would welcome your thoughts.
Hey, I'm Pastor Logan Wolf from Crosspoint Church. I am so sorry that I'm not getting to share this with you live during the Faith Leaders Summit. I was having a number of technical issues on my side, but hopefully you'll get a chance to watch this and we'll find it encouraging and helpful. I just wanted to bring some action steps to everything you've heard the last several weeks, all the stuff you're learning, all the stuff you've been trained in. Like, what do we do with it now? And so I've got a few things that I thought, man, this is stuff we have done in the past, and stuff we're doing now, and stuff I would certainly encourage someone else to begin to do. So the very first thing I would say is resource your people. When it comes to this topic, this issue of suicide prevention and suicidal ideation and anxiety and depression and all these sorts of things, resource your people. And I think this is especially important on the front end. If this is a new conversation for you and your people, if this is something that maybe you've been uncomfortable to bring up, or maybe it's felt a little more taboo, I think this is a great first step. And you can do it a couple different ways. So first, I would just say, man, if you've got in your foyer, lobby, your office space, your classroom space, if somewhere you already have or can put a literature rack or a information table, a bulletin board, something like that, there are a number of resources that you can just make available to your people. We've done little booklets on suicide prevention. I mean, something like this. This is just a real thin book. We've done full-length books as well. This one's we've made available. We've done pamphlets and brochures on things like gun safety, mental health issues, again, suicide prevention. We've done little cards, like business cards, that explain how to use and download the Safe Utah app. We've had piles of gun locks. And so we've taken all this and we just kind of set it out for free. And I think that's the big thing, is these are resources just available that people don't have to come to you and ask for. This, especially again, if this is a new conversation, if this feels more uncomfortable or taboo, people may be hesitant to come and ask for some resources, ask for help, and so they won't. But we can eliminate that obstacle altogether, and just by making these resources available. It doesn't take much to find them. In fact, a number of the resources we've made available, I have actually gotten from or through many of the presenters that you've heard from the last several weeks. Again, simple internet searches. There's a bunch of different organizations that make all those things, those pamphlets, those booklets, including those gun locks, free. And so, man, I encourage you to do that. The second way you can do this is just link to those same resources online. Use your website, use your social media outlets. And what's great about that is, again, one, people can come and get those things anonymously. But then two, you actually are helping not just your people, but others who may just happen to stumble across your stuff. And so your reach is a little wider there. So I'd say, one, resource your people is a great first step. The second thing I would do is I'd encourage you to reach out to your network, especially in regards to this issue. And I mean, we have basically, right, we have given you a network through this event, right? So there's men and women watching this with you who are seeing the need, asking some of the same questions, maybe have some of the same experiences. And then there have been people presenting and sharing and training, speaking to you who are maybe a little further down the road, right? And can answer some of the questions you have. And so I'd say reach out to those people, use that. And I think that's important, again, for a couple of reasons. One, because you don't have to go through this alone. This is not something you have to go through by yourself. And that's huge. I think it's important, we all come from different philosophies and worldviews and faith traditions, and I think we should acknowledge that. I think we do ourselves a disservice when we try to gloss over some of the differences, but there's also some commonalities, and the commonality of this particular event with those presenting, those speaking to you, is that we don't want to see anyone go through this. It's not okay there's never, even for all the differences, there's no one who would say, well, I'm okay if they're struggling in that area. I'm okay if they are, because we're not on the same page about this. That is not the case here. And so you don't have to walk through this by yourself. You can reach out, especially, I can speak for myself, I can speak for the other presenters. Man, reach out and say, I'm going through this, I've got this question, I've got this person struggling with this, I need some help. And we would be happy to walk with you through those questions, through that hurt, through those tears, through that time, and just be with you during that. So I say reach out just so you know you're not alone. The second reason I think that's important to reach out to your network is because you don't have to be an expert. And I fell victim to this. I remember we started this conversation at our church years ago, which is kind of the impetus for even what's happening through this event. And I remember thinking, well, I've got I've got to know all the statistics and be able to recall them, and I've got to be able to point people to all. I got to know all the websites, and I've got to have the anecdotes and the illustrations and all this kind of stuff, and I've got to have memorized and be able to just be able to share it. And then I realized, like many of you, right? If you're faith leaders, you realize this is just one of 1,000 things I have to do. This is one of 1,000 needs people may bring to me, one of 1,000 hurts, one of 1,000 issues. And so to think that I have to become an expert is just not true. I don't have to have all the answers. What I need to know is just where can I turn to find those answers? And again, we're giving you a network where you can do that. If you need help, where can I find this resource? What about this situation? Here are people, men and women, that can point you in the right direction. A huge help. And it's been a huge help to me personally, connecting with these organizations and with these specific men and women. And then a third action step that I would encourage you to do is just to let your own soul rest, right? Rest your own soul. I remember when I first heard the statistics of suicide in Utah, I mean, it just blew my mind. Like, this is something happening. This is crazy happening across Utah. And then when we broke the ice and we started talking about it at our church, to realize, oh, this isn't just a problem out there. It's actually right here in our own gathering. And that shook me. And then something happened that I realized, hey, this isn't just I'm looking at these people in front of me and they're struggling with this. This is actually something I can struggle with too. And man, something a few years ago, I had a very dark place, a very low place, and I remember just hurting very deeply to the point that I was struggling with this. I mean, I had to call my wife to come home from work and say, I need you to be here. I'm not in a good place, and thankfully she did. But I don't always have to be the hero, and I think sometimes as faith leaders, that's what we get. Like, we're always used to dealing with people's problems and then coming to us. And I think there's, it builds relationships when there's that vulnerability and people are being open and honest about what's going on. But I think it helps our relationships in so much that there's reciprocity. It's not healthy for people always to come to us and share and share and share, and we act like we have everything together always. Sometimes we need to say, I'm not okay. Like, I need to talk to someone. I need someone to hold me. I need someone to pray with me and help me through this. And I'm struggling. You don't have to be the hero. Look, God has already sent a Savior, and it is not you. All right, it's Jesus Christ. It's not. You don't have to be the one to come in and rescue everything. It's okay to say, I need a counselor. I need a therapist. I need a week off. I need a break for a minute. And I tell you again, if that would be uncomfortable or foreign or taboo for you to even bring that up in your current context, in your current setting, I want to challenge it. I mean, here's a network of people. Here, I'm available to you. Reach out and say, actually, I registered for this event. I'm here because I want to get some stuff for my people, but actually, there's some things I'm going through. I need some help, and we want to help you with that. So rest your own soul. And again, I think that's, in light of everything you've heard, I think those are 3 simple things to walk out. Resourcing your people, making those available, reaching out to your network. Here's a whole group of people that talking about the same thing. We don't have to go this alone. And then rest your own soul. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm the one that needs some care at this time. Guys, thank you so much. I am so excited that you participated in this event. And I am eager to see what this looks like in the weeks and months ahead as we work through this and encourage one another and support one another around this issue. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sister Michelle Craig. And with our remaining few moments, it's an honor to introduce Rabbi Zippel, and he is going to provide a closing prayer, and he comes from the Chabad community. And Rabbi, we welcome your closing prayer at this time.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to all those who were instrumental in putting this on for the past few weeks, and especially to the incredible presentation today. I don't know that Lori's with us anymore, but I just wanted to give her a shout out if this gets back to her. I thought, hers amongst all the presenters were fantastic, but really thank you to all those who put themselves out there for this incredible summit. Almighty and loving God, a God of kindness, mercy, and compassion, we humbly beseech your blessing upon this most blessed gathering of faith leaders, brothers and sisters uniting from every walk of life, creed, and color, all united in a sacred, common goal, namely to develop the tools to share with all members of our flock the intense love that you, O God, hold for them. O God of healing, so many of your beautiful children carry around a burden that at times seems too much for them to bear. The feelings of hopelessness and the scars of trauma that have accumulated over a lifetime can seem daunting, even impossible to overcome, and leave one feeling like there's no good reason for them to carry on. Over the past several weeks, we have joined together to know how to best open our hearts and souls to those that so need it, to share with them the boundless love that you, O God, hold for them, to open their eyes to the unique role that they and they alone play in perfecting an abode for God here on earth, and to use that inspiration to be the fuel for the fire that will keep them going day after day. Almighty God, give us the grace and humility so that our words may fall on willing ears. Allow us to be the vessel to make your light to shine through to those still in the darkness, and allow us to see the fulfillment of the timeless words of King David in Psalms chapter 51. O God, open my lips and allow my mouth to utter your praise. Creator of heaven and earth, in less than 2 days we begin the Jewish New Year, signaling a fresh start and a new leaf for so many that have struggled through the countless challenges the past year has brought with it. Bless us all, O Lord, that we may see the fulfillment of the liturgy of the high holidays. V'yeda kol pa'ul ki ata pa'altai, v'yavin kol yitzur ki ata yitzartai. May everything that has been made know that it is you who made it, and may all that has been created know that it is you who formed it. And my dear brothers and sisters, allow me to conclude by blessing you, that you indeed be successful in your sacred mission, that wherever we may find pain, we can bring purpose. Wherever we find hopelessness, we can bring healing. Wherever we find trauma, we can rebuild trust. And wherever we find despair, we can recreate divine energy. May the love and connection we take from these weeks together shine throughout our state, our nation, and our world. And may we each succeed to bring that love and connection to all those that need it. Amen.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Zippel, and thank you for being just such a fierce advocate for vulnerable people everywhere. And we wish you a Shana Tova, a very happy and sweet New Year. With that, we're concluding our program for today. We are so grateful to all of you for joining us, to our presenters for their extraordinary wisdom, and to everyone for your patience with the technology, which we have learned is full of unexpected twists and turns, and something we'll continue to refine for next year. But we just wish everyone the best. Be on the lookout for the recordings as well as the other resources we'll be sending. And we hope everyone goes forward in the spirit of action and health, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.